The time has finally come. What do you get when you mix yellow plaid with a big black horse and a cherry tree? For us. That's not at all how I imagined a musical adaptation of Clueless. To compare another musical adaptation of a chick flick to its original film. I'm ready to be completely flabbergasted. And if this is the first time you've ever heard of this concept, then... Hi, my name is Vanderelst, and comparing musical adaptations to their original film is kinda like my bread and butter here on YouTube. That among video essays about musical theater in general. So if this is your first time here on my channel, welcome, hello, grab a seat. Want a glass of water? If it's not your first time here on my channel, then what's up, bestie? How's life? Now for you newbies here, let me give you the 411. We are going to discuss every difference between the 1995 Clueless film and the 2025 musical adaptation. 30-year age gap. Scandalous. I will go over why I think certain changes were made, and I will allocate a point to the strongest choice in my opinion. At the end of the video, we will add all those points together and find out once and for all which version has buns of steel and which one is a full-on Monet. Y'all ready for this? Now let me rejig your memory in case it has been a while since you've last seen the film. It opens on a montage of teenagers living their best life with a voiceover of Cher asking if you think this is a Noxema commercial. Which is a face cream, by the way, in case you didn't know. I didn't know. She assures us that her life is way normal and then proceeds to pick out her outfit of the day with her state-of-the-art fashion software. The stage version reimagined this moment quite differently. We see Cher wake up in her beautiful bedroom and ask the audience if they think this is some sort of a fairy tale castle before she guarantees us that she's a typical teen. So still the same sentiment, although I would argue that comparing your life to a face cream commercial shows way more wit and personality than comparing it to a fairy tale castle. So first point, we'll go to the film. Bing, bing, bing. Okay, let me ask you a question. Clueless obviously has a lot of iconic moments, but if you had to choose just one to take the crown, what would it be? Because for me, that undoubtedly would be Cher's fashion software. The chokehold that machine had on me as a child, it just absolutely captured my imagination and didn't let go. Anyway, you can probably already guess where this is going, but the musical decided not to include the fashion software. I repeat, this is not a drill. The fashion software is not part of the stage adaptation. Cher instead now does a twirl quick change on stage to reveal her notorious yellow checkered suit. And you know, I'm sure the wardrobe department worked really hard on this reveal, and kudos to them, it was flawless. But for me, it didn't even come close to filling the giant gap of the clothing computer. I thought they could have had a lot of fun making that machine come to life on stage, like maybe have this like giant computer screen that she's standing in and all these outfits are like floating in and out in front of her. I don't know, I feel like they opted for the easy way out. Point for the film. Our first introduction to Cher's dad in the film is when we see maid Lucy running away from him. The film really pushed the mean and scary side of her father a bit more. Every time Cher has a chat with him, she's walking backwards away from him. Christian describes him as scary after picking Cher up. When he meets Tai, he forces her out of his chair. The musical turned his scary side down a little bit. It still includes the dialogues where he's tense and yelling into his phone, but we no longer see him being mean towards other characters. Like no pushing people out of chairs, for example. Although 1995 Dad is a bit more out there, I would argue that his 2025 counterpart is more of a stereotype. The film manages to balance out these caricature, angry lawyer moments with some heartfelt conversations between him and Cher. Especially the look he gives when Josh goes to the party to keep an eye on Cher really won me over. To be fair, perhaps the actor in the musical gave the same look and I just couldn't see it. I mean, Trafalgar Theatre isn't that big though, but obviously it is easier to convey a more human side of a character through close-ups. Playing the devil's advocate though, know thy medium. If close-ups aren't an option in your creation, perhaps find a different way to portray his softer side. Maybe a little sing-song? Sorry to sound like a broken record already, but point to the film. The second character we meet is Cher's bestie, Dion. In the film, Cher picks her up in her Jeep, straight away setting up the fact that Cher is a bad driver. In the musical, Dion simply comes to Cher's house. A practical solution that, given the constraints of live theater, makes a lot of sense. The stage version does include these sofas that convert into cars to depict the many vehicles in the other scenes, but introducing this sofa car element for the tiniest moment in the opening number would have disrupted the flow. So I support the decision to make Dion walk to Cher's house. Obviously, that does mean that we lose the setup of Cher being a bad driver, but the musical cleverly works that into a later scene, so all is good. Point for the musical for making intelligent choices. This change does mean that so far in the musical, we have stayed in the same location, namely Cher's house. Only once we arrive at Beverly High, we get a set change and loads of students on stage singing and dancing. I was craving this surge of energy a bit earlier, if I'm honest. Focusing on Cher and her household made the opening number a bit too static for me. The writers tried to zhuzh it up by adding in loads of callbacks from the film, such as Cher's line about the classic columns of her house dating back to the 70s, and talking about her total Betty mom who passed away due to a freak liposuction mistake. But that didn't quite suck me in straight away. Bit of a slow burn in my opinion. I wonder if they played around with opening the show with a group number to then zoom in on Cher. Anyway, that wasn't really a difference between the two versions. It was just a little side note on my feelings about the opening number titled Perfect, which ironically isn't perfect to me. In comes Murray, and this is where the musical decides to go all Hamilton on our asses by turning Dion and Murray's argument into a rap. At first I thought it was a little bit random, but the rap element does come back in later songs, so it's definitely part of the sound tapestry of the show. Cher has her famed as if moment, and then we get to our next difference. Travis's tardiness speech is at the start of the first debate scene in the musical, instead of in a later debate scene like in the film. Although I appreciate the show's attempt to include as many beloved moments as possible from the original, if we're being honest, this rejigging of the puzzle doesn't make much sense. Originally, the tardiness speech happens in the second debate scene. The purpose of that scene in the film is for Cher to feed Mr. Hall that Miss Geist thinks he's the only one in this school with intelligence, planting those first seeds of her mischievous plan. In the musical, Cher gives Hall that information during the second song, Involved. So that second debate scene has essentially been reduced to the bare minimum and has become a snippet of dialogue in a song, which essentially means that the tardiness speech was just kept for the sake of keeping it. I thought that it slowed down the pace quite a lot, and seeing this is the first proper scene of the show, we definitely do not need that. I guess you could argue that it's character exposition, but do we really need that for Travis? Like, don't we already get a very clear idea of what kind of guy he is in his first scene with Tai? I would have skipped. Point to film. Cher's debate speech remains the same. The one thing that changes drastically in the musical is the teacher's reaction. Mr. Hall is now supportive of Cher, backing up her dinner party analogy to Amber. But that doesn't make any sense because moments later, Cher receives a C on her report card. Plus, when Cher approaches Mr. Hall about potentially raising her grades, he says that her work is unresearched, unstructured, and unconvincing. So clearly Hall isn't a fan of Cher. So why did the musical writers kind of made it seem like perhaps he might be? Did they feel the need to explain the dinner party analogy to the audience? Because we get it. It's not that complicated. I feel like they kind of missed the point a little bit here. Hearing Cher say that she expects to have good grades despite literally just seeing the teacher not being that impressed with her presentation shows us that she lives in her own world. But if the teacher supports her theory, like, I would also expect her to have good grades. I have no clue why the creative team decided to change this from the original. Say it with me. Point for the film! The musical then decides to minimize set changes and stays in the classroom after Mr. Hall refuses to raise Cher and Dion's grades. In the film, at this point, Cher goes home and we meet Josh. But in the musical, we dive straight into the plan to set up Mr. Hall and Miss Geist in the song Involved. Unlike in the film, where the different stages of this plan are dotted across multiple scenes, the musical decides to use the time-traveling powers of music and groups all these moments together in one montage. So within one song, we go from spreading the rumors, to writing the love letter, to doing the little makeovers, and even having the teachers share a kiss. Old people can be so sweet. Visually, the stage version created a lot of fun images by simply rearranging the classroom chairs, and that visual interest was desperately needed because I don't think that song was very strong, if I'm honest. Like, I see the idea of it being a bit like Pink Panther-y, you know, but having that low melody just made it all feel a little bit lackluster. All in all, I think I'm still gonna give the point to the musical, not because I necessarily think that grouping these moments together is a better choice than dotting them across multiple scenes, but because I enjoy that they use the strengths of the medium that they're working in. And also the musical is kind of running behind points-wise, so you know, gotta give it some love. Speaking of the Hall and Geist romance, the musical has Cher writing a different Shakespeare verse in the love letter. In the film, she writes, "Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, but thy eternal summer shall not fade." The musical opted for, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Both are from Shakespeare's 18th sonnet, but I think the musical might have chosen for the opening verse just because it's a little bit more well-known. Which is the better love letter? Maybe thy eternal summer shall not fade, simply because it's a statement and not a question? She questions? The jury's not out on this one. Squeezing the entire Hall and Geist romance into the second song of the musical has major consequences for Cher's character development. 1. Breezing over Cher's starting point. In the film, we first meet Josh after Mr. Hall refuses to change Cher's grades. When Cher's dad at the dinner table questions why her report card isn't ready, Cher replies that she's in negotiations with her teachers. Josh mocks the idea that Cher could raise her grade, to which she replies that she has already done it loads in the past. This moment showcases Cher's manipulative side. In the musical, when we first meet Josh, Cher has already set up Miss Geist and Mr. Hall, and so she has already changed her grade from a C to an A. She even proclaims to the audience that she feels inspired by this act of altruism. By racing through the Hall and Geist romance, the musical loses the opportunity to properly set up Cher's more calculated side. Sure, we see a glimpse of it when she concocts the idea of setting up Mr. Hall with Miss Geist, but that wasn't enough for me to really convey the same message. It felt more innocent rather than manipulative, especially when after that scene she says she wants to do more acts of altruism. So for that statement to be followed by Josh calling her selfish felt a little bit disconnected. Of course Josh has a point. Cher only set up Mr. Hall and Miss Geist for her own personal gain. But again, because the musical didn't take time to properly set up that bratty starting point, it kind of just feels like an exaggeration on his behalf. The film succeeded better at portraying Cher's calculated side by showing it to us in a montage where Cher convinces teachers to give her higher grades. The musical only tells us that she's manipulative, which just doesn't have the same effect. That old show don't tell nugget. The second consequence of jamming the Hall Geist romance into one song is that Josh and Cher's relationship gets a little bit stuck. So like I said, in their first scene in the film, Josh doesn't believe Cher can convince her teachers to raise her grades. In their first scene in the musical, however, Josh already accuses Cher of being selfish. Josh obviously throws her the same accusations in the film, but he only does so in the driving scene. So the musical basically skips the first step of their relationship and goes straight to the second one. Meaning that when the driving scene comes along in the musical, Josh now has to say something else. He can't already move on to the next step in their relationship because that's when he picks her up in the valley. So the musical kind of gets stuck in this place where it has no choice but to repeat itself and have Josh call Cher selfish again. This makes their dynamic feel stagnant. Consequence number 3, meeting Tai gets moved forward. So because the musical has backed itself into a little corner and it now has to find another reason for Josh to call Cher self-centered in the driving scene, they decide to introduce Tai earlier. So Cher taking on Tai as her next project can now be the reason why Josh calls her egotistical. In itself, I actually think that this is a very good solution. My giant issue with this swap, though, is the integration of the topic of Tai into the driving scene. It's so incredibly clumsy. So in the musical, Josh gets annoyed with Cher for driving badly and says something along the lines of like, "Am I meant to be impressed by this?" To which Cher responds, "I thought you'd be impressed with me for helping out Tai." Sorry, weren't we talking about learning how to drive? Like, how is Tai relevant to this situation? Yeah, not a home run, I'm afraid. So even though I was earlier praising the musical for utilizing the medium's strengths by like putting all of the moments into one song, I'm starting to realize that the repercussions might not be worth it. Is there a way to still keep the song without tampering with Josh and Cher's relationship timeline? I guess we could move their first scene before the romance, but then obviously she wouldn't know about her grades yet. It's tricky, isn't it, this adaptation business? Not to be underestimated. But so does this mean that I'm retracting my previous point for the musical? I'm sorry! You better make a comeback, Miss Musical. In Josh's song Human Barbies, which he sings in that infamous driving scene that I can't seem to shut up about, Cher receives a phone call from Dion to say that popular stud Elton broke up with his girlfriend. Cher is ecstatic because this means that he is now free to date Tai. In the film, this phone call doesn't happen at all. Cher decides Elton should be Tai's new beau when she sees Tai is interested in skater boy Travis. Interestingly, this scene where Cher disapproves of Travis and guides Tai towards Elton is still included in the musical. So the phone call in Human Barbies isn't vital to the plot at all. So why did they add it in then? My interpretation is that the musical creatives wanted to give Cher a moment of self-reflection. Josh accuses her of playing dolls with everyone around her, dressing them up and making them kiss, which she obviously disregards because, ew, it's stinky Josh who's saying it. But then when Dion gives her the news that Elton is single and her first instinct is to couple him up with Tai, she can't help but to see his point a little bit. Of course, she doesn't acknowledge it out loud and sticks to her plan, but I like that she already gets a little glimmer of respect for Josh at this point. Point for the musical. Next up, a very easy point for the musical. They got rid of all the toxic diet culture talk. The Clueless film is very much a product of the 90s, so Cher's relationship to food is a bit problematic, to say the least. It's crazy how this mindset was like some sort of aspirational aesthetic. Even crazier how that's kind of making a comeback. Luckily, the musical gave it the very needed update. Point for the musical. Tai and Travis's timeline gets a little reworked as well. In the film, they meet in the cafeteria and bond over stickers and smoke. After Tai's transformation, we get another tiny interaction between the two of them where Travis invites her for a party in the Val. The musical rejigs these moments so that the sticker conversation actually only takes place after Tai's transformation. In their first scene now, Tai asks Travis for directions, he cracks a little bit of a joke, and their chemistry is instantly noticeable. After Tai's transformation, he still invites her for the party in the Val, but he also says that he misses her pink hair. I really like the choice to have Travis acknowledge the change in her. And by moving the sticker dialogue to this moment in the story, we get reminded of how well these two work together before Cher comes meddling. So point to the musical. Next up is the party in the Val. You know, I would never say that the soundtrack of the musical is like really strong, but it does have a few bangers, like the party in the Val. It's just catchy, you know. Or even better, the she's all that and a bag of chips. Yeah, that one makes a lot of random appearances in my head, I have to admit. Anyway, back to the Val. In the film, they play a game of suck and blow, and Elton deliberately drops the card and kisses Cher, showing clearly that he is interested in her. This bit gets cut out of the musical, I assume because it would be slowing down the song too much. In a way, I do kind of miss this blatant sign of Elton that he is interested in Cher and her just completely choosing to ignore it and like sticking to her plan. But then I guess it's not 100% needed for the plot either, so I understand why the musical kind of got rid of it. Who deserves the point? Can I give them half a point each? Of course I can. I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's my video. What do we think of the outfit, guys? It's an Alaia. I ain't no liar. This is Alaia. The whole concussion bit stays the same. Shout out to the late Brittany Murphy for being a comedy goddess. And of course, they also kept the rollin' with the homies. And then it's time to leave the party. In the film, Cher makes a big deal out of trying to get Elton to take Tai home, whereas in the musical, she's too late to intervene and Tai is already gone before she can try to swap places with her. I guess this actually ties in with the suck and blow game. The musical cuts another moment where Cher stubbornly tries to orchestrate things, which is a real shame, I think, because these moments are very indicative of where she is in her character journey. So I'm gonna retract the half points I gave earlier and just give one whole point to the film, if that makes sense. No, you're being complicated. Elton tries it on with Cher, he leaves her behind when she rejects him, and then she gets mugged in the parking lot. In the film, Cher tells Josh on the phone that she's been mugged. In the musical, she only tells him about it at the diner. I think that's weird. To me, it makes way more sense to lead with this dramatic thing that has just happened. Not only to vent about it, but also because it kind of forces Josh to come pick her up. Like, clearly she isn't in a safe environment. The musical also changes Josh having to come all the way to the valley to him already being there on his date with Heather. Okay. I've got to admit, I have no clue why they made this change. My first instinct is that it is a practical reason. Perhaps the musical creatives preferred for the Hamlet chat where Cher corrects Heather to happen at a table rather than in a car like in the film. The car sofa transformer thingies that they use in the musical don't have a backseat, but like, surely that's really an easy fix. Just have her sit on a little stool behind it. I don't know. I'm really having a hard time trying to justify this choice. I feel like perhaps maybe they could have just kept it. Please let me know if there's like this massively obvious thing that I'm just not seeing. Point for the film. Cher then sees Josh kiss Heather, the cherry on top of this horrible evening. She sings the Act 1 closer where she dusts herself off and promises herself that she'll make everything perfect again. The beginning of Act 2 actually stays pretty close to the original, but I'd like to highlight a few things. The scene where Christian picks up Cher for their date gets turned into the song Reasonable Doubt, where Josh discusses his doubts around Christian. I loved this NSYNC type of song where Josh and the interns turn into this like boy band. I was fangirling like crazy. So definitely a point to the musical for that one. The party Cher and Christian attend becomes the song Keeping My Eye on You, which had an amazing choreo. I've got to say, I loved pretty much every dance in this show. Choreographer Lizzie Guy truly did an amazing job at conveying the energy and playfulness that this story needs. So the musical definitely deserves another point for that. The musical goes out of its way to label Josh as the outsider of the lawyer intern group. They talk down to him. Cher's dad says Josh needs to do whatever they ask him to do. Josh even point blank says that they don't want him there. Pigeonholing Josh like that works very well because now when Cher suggests to buy the intern some pizza, she's helping Josh to gain sympathy. In the film, none of this setup really happens, and so this takeout idea is more of a symbol of her altruism in general, whereas in the musical, it is one for her altruism towards Josh specifically. I love it when adaptation writers take an element that was already present in the original and add an extra layer to it. Very clever. Point to the musical. Adding more depth to the takeout idea in the musical is a good shout, as the musical decides to cut out a big part in Cher and Josh's relationship trajectory. In the film, Josh's mum calls the house to get a hold of him, but Josh signals to Cher that he doesn't want to speak to her. Turns out that Josh is not planning to go home over the break and wants to stay in his dorm. Cher says that he should take his old room back and that he can hang with her and her friends this summer. Josh questions if that might be weird as he's this brother type of person to her, to which she responds, "You are not my brother." I enjoy that the film addressed this because let's be real, everyone in the audience is thinking the same thing. Is this kind of like incest? So to have Cher actually clarify that that is not the dynamic of their relationship really helped me to get on board with their romance. The musical substitutes this scene with Josh and Cher bonding over some pizza where they talk about their relationships with Heather and Christian, but not about their connection to each other. I think my at times quite black or white brain really craved a clear description of their dynamic, so I'm gonna give the point to the film. Christian actually states that he is gay in the musical. He does so on their second date in the song Tonight. In the film, we only get the official tea from Murray in the freeway scene. Christian singing the lyric "Today is my lucky day" is actually so lovely in the journey of Cher finding her altruism. Like, she made him feel safe to come out to her, even though she had something quite different in mind. Point to the musical. Oh boy, I absolutely adore that the musical went full in and turned Christian's altercation in the mall into a full-blown fight. When some boys threaten Tai in the mall, Christian intervenes and gives them a shove in the film. But the musical writers saw the potential here and were like, "Step aside, boys. We'll show you how it's done." One of the rare occasions where being a theater kid and being dramatic as fuck actually comes in handy. Specifically, the callback mid-fight to Christian being obsessed with Spartacus was just exquisite. Points for the musical! So after Tai's near-death experience, she becomes the most popular girl in school. In the film, Cher is visibly a bit jealous at Tai's newfound popularity, and she tries to chime in about when she was mugged, only to have people completely dismiss her. In the musical, Cher never really tries to share Tai's spotlight. She still offers to go shopping together to buy a gift for Christian, but I don't know, for me that didn't really read as jealousy. It seems like the musical writers seem quite reluctant to show any negative side to Cher. Think back to them breezing over her more bratty, manipulative side at the start. This trend continues when the musical scraps Cher's ignorant remarks to her cleaner about not speaking Mexican, and they even double down by actually showing us Cher apologize to her cleaner, whereas in the film, Cher briefly mentions the apology in one of her voiceovers. I feel like the writers are doing Cher a disservice by constantly highlighting her good parts and kind of just omitting her bad traits. They're stripping back the more layered character from the film to a more superficial version. I don't like this. Point for the film. Cher realizing she likes Josh is obviously a song in the musical called Clueless. Duh. Unfortunately, the build up to this song wasn't as effective for me. The film has this fun little scene where Cher doesn't know how to act around Josh anymore, which gave me butterflies. In the musical, Cher goes straight to her dad to ask for advice instead of showing us how her dynamic with Josh has changed. I'm sad I didn't get to indulge in those awkward new crush vibes, so point for the film. In the film, the conversation where Travis donates his smoke pipe to the Pismo Beach Relief happens between him and Cher and not with Tai like in the musical. The film has him talk about the sobriety program he joined and he invites Cher to his amateur skateboard competition. Tai then apologizes to Cher at said skateboard competition. But due to the limitations of live theater, having a full-on skate ramp for one tiny scene is pretty much impossible. The show probably used pretty much the entire budget for the set on Cher's magnificent closet. The musical creatives therefore had to come up with a solution so they could avoid having the skate competition, and a simple switch seems to do the trick. Tai now apologizes to Cher at the donation table. Travis then comes to donate his smoking pipe, and that's where he invites Tai to the skateboard competition, and their sparks are flying again. A very elegant solution, I'd say. Point for the musical. Another beat that is now also moved to the donation table is Cher making a mistake and Josh defending her. In the film, Josh comes to her defense after one of the interns is angry at her for misplacing a file. In the musical, Josh defends her when Elton and Amber are making fun of her fundraising efforts. The musical still has Cher and Josh sat down for their reconciliation, but now instead of on the stairs at home, they sit on the floor in front of the donation table, which I thought was quite awkward. I think it was a good choice to turn this moment into a song in the musical. My only regret though is that Josh straight away leads with only positive things about Cher. In the film, the tension of this moment gets built up very well exactly because Josh is struggling to be vulnerable about it. He says something nice, but then he instantly kind of takes it back. Seeing him struggle with opening up about his true feelings really makes this kiss one of those butterfly in the belly moments. I think the film absolutely nailed it. Or maybe I just have a little crush on Paul Rudd. I mean, who doesn't? In the musical, I didn't really feel the electricity as much. I think it is in part because they skipped quite a few of the formative bickering scenes between the two of them, which obviously all helped to build up the anticipation. Now it felt a bit more like, yeah, I guess they kiss here because that's where the story ends. Point to the film. The musical cuts the girls fighting over the bouquet at Hall and Geist's wedding and opts for a simple, snappy epilogue where Cher quotes Socrates saying, "The only thing we know is that we know nothing. So we are all clueless." Aww. Cheers to all being dumb bitches. In all honesty though, I was a bit apprehensive when the musical adaptation of Clueless was announced, simply because the quality of these chick flicks turned musicals seems to decline with every new edition. But I've gotta say, I enjoyed Clueless the musical. It had witty lyrics, imaginative choreo, and a really strong cast. Do I think that it will stand the test of time and rise above like some of its peers such as Legally Blonde? I wouldn't go as far as saying that. I thought the music was a bit basic at times, and like I just discussed, some of the narrative changes kind of interrupted with the flow in my opinion. But I don't know why I'm already giving you my final thoughts when I've not even given you the results of the competition. Okay, everyone put your hands together for the film with 11 points! Only 1 point more than the musical. Loyal watchers of my channel will probably know that this is kind of a first. Normally the musical always wins in these comparisons because I'm clearly biased as fuck. But for once, the film came out on top. Wow. Growth. Anyway, if you've seen the Clueless adaptation, let me know your thoughts. I love to keep the discussion going in the comments. Also, they just announced a musical adaptation of 13 going on 30, so this chick flick turned musical trend is far from over, but I ain't complaining. But before you head off, can you please just give me some feedback in regards to the topic for my next video? I'm really tempted to stay in Girl World and do an in-depth analysis between Legally Blonde and Clueless because, oh my god, the overlap is crazy. But at the same meantime, The Great Gatsby has just opened here in the West End and I am dying to see it. So let me know in the comments which one you vote for and why. And if you love this vid, please consider giving it some love. Making these comparisons takes a lot of time and of course I really enjoy doing it, but also, some, words of affirmation would be nice from time to time when I'm struggling to balance 3 other jobs alongside this. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around till the end. Have a lovely day. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye!